It's great to be back. I think Rabbi Pant and I were talking before that between in-person and Zooms, this is maybe my 4th time speaking to the group, and I know I've been really impressed and had to work hard with some of the questions that people ask here. It's a very educated group here, so I'm really excited both to get to speak to you and to take questions afterwards. We have a lot to cover, right? We talked about not only diplomacy, security, politics, and U.S.-Israel relations, but we're going to jump around back and forth. I actually want to start with a little story, a true story, which you might have heard a little bit about. Let me just check really quick. Who knows what happened? Major event for the Israeli spy service, the Mossad, January 31st, 2018. Who knows what happened? Okay, nobody yet. I'm going to give another hint. Who has heard of the Mossad stealing Iran's nuclear secrets in Tehran from under its nose? Some more people.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm going to quickly tell a little bit about that story. One, because it's a great story, but also it's going to tie into a bunch of the other themes that we're going to talk about later. It's going to tie into some of the diplomatic issues. It's going to certainly tie into the security issues, U.S.-Israel relations, and even a little bit into domestic Israeli politics. So basically, 10:30 p.m., January 31st, 2018, and if you've watched enough spy movies or people stealing from banks, the professional is like, all right, we only have 2 minutes, we got to do this really fast before the police get here, the FBI, whoever it is, 2 minutes, 90 seconds, 60 seconds, 30 seconds, let's go. Let's get out to it. How long do people think the Mossad spent stealing Iran's nuclear secrets? Any guesses? You can call out. Anyone? 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 6 hours and 29 minutes. They took their time. 6 hours and 29 minutes under the nose of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and all of these other security services. How do they do it? So Iran, one of the problems that Israel has with Iran is it's one of the smartest enemies. They learn really well, they learn from the past, they adjust, that Israel has ever faced. And Iran did something really smart. They said, you know what? Our nuclear secrets, we don't want to put them in a major defense ministry, military facility that everybody knows about, that Israeli satellites are following, that the CIA is following, that everybody knows about. We're going to put it in an abandoned warehouse, in an area where there's lots of abandoned warehouses. Nobody's going to pay attention. We'll pay a really small footprint there. No one's going to ever know. How could anyone ever know that it was there? And the truth is, I think this was a brilliant plan. It was a brilliant plan. Except the Mossad knew where the secrets were beforehand, so when they moved it to the abandoned warehouse, they already knew. But other than that, which by the way just, is mesmerizing how much the Mossad knows what's going on within Iran. So that's how they know where it is. They staked it out. They knew how to fake the alarm systems. They knew how to hack into any of the security systems. They knew when the guards were going off duty. They knew when the guards were walking around this way, walking around that way, and they got to take their time, and they had a 2-hour head start. By the way, if anybody's seen the movie Fargo about the CIA rescuing Americans from Iran in around 1979, the Americans who were stuck, and there's this scene at the airport where the Iranian guards are like driving on their truck, following the airplane. They almost got them. It's not true. There were lots of close calls, but they weren't that close a call. So people would think when the movie is made about this Mossad heist of Iran's nuclear secrets, when the movie is made, I'm sure there will be like a scene where they're chasing them right out of the abandoned warehouse. Not true. Okay, they had no clue that they were there for about 2 hours. Now they did later almost catch some of them in the safe houses. There were some special operations by the Israeli military and some other things that I can't reveal yet. They're still classified to get some people out. Every single Israeli, dozens of agents got out safely. That's unbelievable. A couple more unbelievable details, and then I'm going to talk about, again, aside from this being a really cool, exciting story, why it matters at a policy, diplomatic, national security, global level. It matters a lot, but we're not done yet with some of the cool details. They had torches. They got to 3,600 degrees. All right, they knew somebody was clearly on the inside and knew exactly what kind of safes were keeping the files and knew exactly the intensity, the heat that they needed to break through the torches. They practiced it on safes that were similar somewhere else beforehand to make sure that it would work. They got a whole bunch of trucks. They have the fake trucks, the real trucks. There were only 2 trucks that were actually carrying the documents. There were other trucks that just went in all kinds of other directions to mix people up. And the best part of the story, how did they actually get it out of Iran? Did anybody hear about this? The Iranians themselves smuggled their own secrets out of Iran. What? What Iranian would do that? So there's a country called Azerbaijan, and they have a very long border with Iran. Now at this point I have to say, according to foreign sources, because I'm under the Israeli censor, I'm an Israeli journalist, so according to foreign sources, they smuggle it across the Azerbaijani border. There's a lot of drug smugglers at Azerbaijan, and they have one rule: give me money and don't ask, don't tell. So basically they wrapped it all up, and the Iranian smugglers smuggled their own nuclear secrets across the border into Azerbaijan, and then it was not as difficult to get it back to Israel. So this is the wild story. And why does this story matter? So it matters not only because whether you think it was good or bad, it led to the Trump administration pulling out of the Iranian nuclear accord of 2015, which was basically the diplomatic structure between the US, the EU, Russia, China, and Iran about the nuclear issue, and that changed the whole structure. It also impacted the IAEA. The IAEA is the International Nuclear Inspectors. Until then, the IAEA's policy was, when they saw that maybe the Iranians might be cheating, they would say, well, it's not such a big cheat, let's look the other way, and we don't want to endanger the deal itself. The deal itself, I could spend an hour talking about it, but basically, in short, the deal itself was Iran limits its nuclear program, right? They had enriched enough uranium at low quality for about 10 nuclear weapons. They gave almost all of that away. They stopped enriching uranium with as many of those centrifuges that spin really fast, and that's what enriches uranium, so they could only spin so many of them. And in exchange, the sanctions that the world had against them would come off, right? That's the deal in a nutshell. Israel never liked the deal because it was going to sunset, it was going to expire, parts of it in 2025, parts of it in 2030, and sort of from the Israeli perspective, by the way, both on the left and the right, there was pretty much unanimity in Israel. You could have the left and the right on the Palestinian issue, which we'll talk about. You can have left and the right on the judicial overhaul, judicial reform issue, which we'll talk about. Almost all Israelis were not happy with the Iran nuclear deal because of the whole, again, with the sunset expiration, holes having to do with Iran being able to test ballistic missiles, Iran being able to continue terrorism in the region. After the deal was signed, some Israelis said, you know what, let's not mess up the deal. And that was a debate. Anyway, it changed that whole structure, and it made the IAEA more aggressive towards Iran, because once they saw that Iran had continued aspects of the nuclear program, they couldn't ignore it anymore. The evidence, this wasn't just a physical nuclear computer file. The reason it took 6 hours and 29 minutes was they took the original files, physical original files. One last story about that, and then we're going to go more big picture about diplomacy, security, the other things, is Netanyahu made a big speech April 30th, 2018, and they were preparing him for the speech. What is he going to reveal about the nuclear secrets? And they show him this big pink page. He said, pink? I can't do a pink page, I can't put that in front of the world, it's going to make me look weak. They said, this is the original that the Iranians were using for the nuclear secrets were in pink. So this was the physical files. They took the original physical files out of Iran, and so the IAEA couldn't ignore it. And the IAEA since then has condemned Iran twice. They hadn't condemned Iran since 2012. They condemned them twice. There's also a threat, basically, from the IAEA to potentially refer Iran to the UN Security Council, which could lead to snapping back all the global sanctions, not just the sanctions from the United States. So this operation, you could say, was just a theft, and was just really exciting, but actually had major global implications, changed the entire way that everybody was approaching the Iranian issue. Now, I want to talk about some of the other diplomatic issues, but it's all going to tie together in the end. Let's talk about the Palestinians. I would think it would be great if there was some diplomatic process to speak about, but basically there is no diplomatic process right now. The most that the Biden administration was doing with the prior Israeli administration of Naftali Bennett, or the current Israeli administration of Benjamin Netanyahu, is don't mess things up more. Sort of don't do something that would be considered provocative. Don't build new settlements. Sort of keep things the way they are, status quo. Why? It's complicated. Some of it has to do with the sort of internal issues that are going on with Israel and those internal debates over the judicial reform, judicial overhaul, over the trial against Benjamin Netanyahu. Until those things are over with, it's sort of hard to do something big outside the country. Some of it's because of Mahmoud Abbas,